Hi everyone, this is Aeni. This poem analyze video because I cannot stop for that by Emily Dickinson are made to fulfill the final exam of Prose and Poetry lecture by Miss Yani. Hope you enjoy it. So first we got historical context because I Cannot Stop for That was published in 1863 and believed to be written between 1855 and 1863. These are the years in which Emily Dickinson wrote most intensely. During Dickinson's early years, she experienced the death of many people close to her, including that of her cousin. It is easy to see why she felt familiar with that. Dickinson also lived near a cemetery, so she watched many people, even loved ones, riding in a hearse to their final resting place. This is a likely inspiration for the setting of this poem. In this time of sorrow, she would likely have heard sermon about salvation, paradise, and mentioned waiting in the eternity. Because I cannot stop for that makes it very clear that Dickinson, at some point in her life, viewed that as something sweet and gentle. She welcomed that, perhaps because of the idea that she would be only passing from this life to somewhere better. This is portrayed in the first stanza of the poem when the author begins her ride with Dad, viewing him as a welcome and familiar friend. Dickinson appears to have toyed with the idea of believing in an afterlife in paradise, but in the end claims that she was one of the lingering bad ones, which suggests that she wanted to believe in life after death in paradise, but could not. In the end, she believed she grave was her final resting place. Next, we got theme. There are several important themes in Because I Cannot Stop for That. The most obvious of these are mortality and death. What makes these poems take on these two themes so interesting is that they are depicted from a position of immortality. The speaker is already in the afterlife when she is describing her experience with death. This leads to another theme, immortality. This is part of the reason why the speaker is so calm throughout the majority of the poem. Next, we got tone and mood. This poem has a very distinct tone and mood. The tone, which is the voice of the poet or speaker in the poem, is calm and measured. She is aware of what is happening around her but is not overly emotional about it. This is maintained throughout the first few stanzas until the speaker gets closer to death. At this point, things start to shift a little and the tone becomes more sinister. This is seen through words like chill and quivering. The last lines bring back the peace of the first part of the poem as the speaker matter-of-factly states that the horse's head are pointed towards eternity. The mood of a poem is the emotional experience that the poet is attempting to create for the reader. It is what the reader should feel while reading and after finishing the poem. In the case of this particular poem, the tone and mood are tied together. The next is structure and form. Because I Cannot Stop for That by Emily Dickinson is a 6 stanzas poem that is divided into sets of 4 lines, known as quatrains. These quatrains do not follow a single rhyme scheme, although there are examples of perfect rhyme in the poem. For example, me, immortality, and civility in the first 2 stanzas. The matter is much more consistent. It resembles a regular metrical pattern. The first and third line are made up of 4 sets of 2 beats, or a total of 8 syllables. The first of these beats is unstressed, and the second is stressed. This is known as a iambic tetrameter. The second and fourth line also use iambs or unstressed and stressed beats, but there are only three sets of two beats in each line. This is known as iambic trimeter. Next, literary devices. Dickinson makes use of several literary devices in Because I Cannot Stop for That. These include but are not limited to alliteration, elision, personification, and enjambment. The first of these, alliteration, occurs when words are used in succession or at least appear close together and begin with the same sound. For example, labor and leisure in the second stanza and school and serve in the third stanza. Personification is one of the most obvious techniques at work in this poem. It occurs when a poet imbues a non-human creature or object with human characteristic. That is a very clearly personified from the first stanza. He acts as the speaker's sweeter, encouraging her to get into the carriage and ride with him into the unknown. He is both kind and civil. An allusion is an expression that's meant to call something specific to the mind without directly stating it. Although it is not clearly stated in the lines of this poem, it is clear that the speaker is supposed to be in some sort of afterlife, likely the Christian concept of heaven. But the fact that it's not stated explicitly allows any number of the interpretation about what kind of world the speaker is living in now. Another important technique commonly used in poetry is enjambment. It occurs when a line is cut off before its natural stopping point. Enjambment forces a reader down to the next line and the next quickly. One has to move forward in order to comfortably resolve a phrase or sentence. Next, we can analyze stanza by stanza. So, stanza 1 in Emily Dickinson poem Because I Cannot Stop for That. The author personifies Dad, portraying him as a close friend, or perhaps even a gentleman sweeter. In the first stanza, she reveals that she will come Dad when she says he can't stop for me. The pleasant tone of the poem further suggests that the author is quite comfortable with that. Stanza 2. The carriage ride is symbolic of the author's departure from life. She is in the carriage with death and immortality. Dickinson reveals her willingness to go with death when she says that she had put away labor and leisure for his civility. This further reveals that the author has come to terms with her own mortality. She has set down all she wanted to do in life and willingly entered the carriage with death and immortality. She may be aware that had she not gone willingly, they would have taken her captive nonetheless, but this does not seem to alter her perception of the two characters as kind, thoughtful, and even gentle. This is portrayed as Dad drives slowly for her, allowing her to reminisce. He knew no haste as they drove. He takes her through the course of her life with a slow and patient ride. Immortality rides along but is silent. Stanza 3. They drive past the school where the children drove, implying that the author is generously given a few moments to remember her childhood. They then drive past the gazing grain, allowing the author to think back upon the prime of her life. Then they pass the setting sun. This symbolizes the author dead. The sunset is beautiful and gentle, and the passing from life to eternity is portrayed as such. Stanza 4. There is a sudden shift in tone in the fourth stanza. Suddenly, now that the sun has set, the author realizes that she is quite cold and she shivers. Then she becomes aware that she is underdressed. Prior to this moment of realization, the author felt quite comfortable with death and immortality. After all, she was riding along with them in only her gossamer and her tippet only tooling, or in other words, in only a sheer nightgown. In the first third stanza, the author is on close affectionate terms with death and immortality, describing death as a gentleman suitor who is kind and civil. She shows no shame at being underdressed. However, when the sun sets and the cold dams sets in, she becomes aware of her inappropriate attire. Stanza 5. In her moment of realization that she has been seduced by death, they pause before her new house, a swelling of the ground. She claimed the roof was scarcely visible and the cornice in the ground. The tone becomes one of disappointment as the author realized that death is not all she thought it would be. Now, as the sun has set on her life and she is standing before her new forever home, disappointment sets in. Dad was kind and gentle, like a gentleman's sweeter. He lured her in with grandiose promises of eternity. Now that she sees her small, dumb, eternal home, she feels cheated. Stanza 6. It has now been centuries and yet feels shorter than the day as life goes on without her. It has been centuries since that moment of realization when she first surmised, that dad had seated her, that he had appeared a kindly gentleman at first but had left her alone in the dark, cold, damp grave. The last one we got summary. In the first line of the poem, the speaker uses the famous line because I cannot stop for that, or he kindly stopped for me. This phrase hints at the personification that is going to be utilized throughout the stanzas to describe the experience of entering the afterlife. That stop for the speaker and help her into the carriers that held just ourselves or an immortality. They drove along the lane and the speaker takes note of what she sees around her. She was in the process of putting away the life she knew and allowing this next stage of existence to take over. They pass a school, fields, and the setting sun, a very obvious symbol of death. The poem concludes with the speaker saying that it has been centuries since all this occurred, and she first realized the horse head were pointed toward eternity. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for watching the videos. Thank you for, you know, hearing me. Thank you for everything and see you in the next video. Bye bye.